and it's just a privilege to talk about my book and my journey with all of you. So thank you very much for coming to begin with. I think, you know, when you have a book and it has a title, hopefully, and people look at it and they say, well, you know, where does this title come from? Because it's the title and it says The Widow's Journey, so you know it's about what it's about. But how does one really get a title of a book? And the story I'm about to share with you is kind of funny, but part of it's not. And moving forward is a phrase you hear a lot. So what happened is I work for an online university, which your kid does also. And prior to COVID, we gathered about 4 times a year from all over the country. Just as you all live in California, I live in Florida, we have people all over the United States. So approximately 4 times a year we all gather. And we have all-day meetings, and we work, and we chat, and in universities you're always having the academic argument. Nobody agrees with everybody. So we gather, and it's great meetings, but at night you go to dinner with someone you probably like better. You know, so you all go to dinner in small groups, and it's lovely. So one of my colleagues, when I would come in to Cincinnati, and at night he would say, I know it's difficult for you because you lost your husband, and he's a very kind, thoughtful, spiritual, reflective man. And he said, I'm going to take you out to dinner, which he did most times when I came in. And he said, I know you love a French restaurant, so I'm going to take you to a French restaurant. And I said, oh, great, thank you. So we go to this French restaurant, which is lovely. It's got tablecloths, it's got piped in nice, quiet French music, lovely. So we're sitting there, and he said, I did want to have a conversation with you and tell you something. And I said, okay. And one of the things we can take off the table is, although he's a male colleague, he has a girlfriend, partner for years who I met, so that's not an issue. It's dinner. So he said, I really want to talk to you about a thing that I think will help you. And I said, thank you. And he says, it may be time for you to move on. Now, in all kindness, people say 2 things to you, and they mean well. It's time for you to move on, maybe, and the other one is, you might want to think about moving out of your home. It's too big, or it's too expensive, it's too much work, it's got too many memories. And what people don't realize is those are the 2 worst things you can say to somebody. It's time to move on for someone like me meant I was leaving my husband somewhere and I was moving on. That was a bit much. So I was quiet, and he said it once. And we had our appetizers, and then at the end he said, so let's talk about you moving on.
So cute.
Now there you go. And I said, okay. And he said to me, and they're bringing the steak. Now, mostly I eat fish and chicken, but I do eat meat once in a while. And there's a reason I'm telling you this. So there was a steak, and he divided it in half, and we were each going to have a half of steak. And he said, again, he goes, so let's talk about maybe you opening your heart to other people, or let's talk about you maybe going into new experiences and moving on. And with that, I don't know who the baseball fan was, but 3 strikes with me, and I'm done. And so if you're sitting in a restaurant and you're either in a good restaurant or a steakhouse, you know there's a steak knife. So the forks are on the left, and the steak knife is like half of it is a serrated edge, And then you've got a beautiful wooden handle, and he's telling me to move on, and I'm like going like this, and I see the, and I say, let me explain something to you. If you say move on to me one more time, I may lunge. And so, you know, he's, like I said, very spiritual, very reflective, very kind. And there's about 30 to 45 seconds of dead silence, which is a long time, isn't it? And he looks at me and he goes, all right, Arlene, it's very possible you can't move on, but I'll bet you can move forward. And the light bulb goes off and the chills go up and down. I go, oh, I can move forward. I've done that my whole life. And so my perspective at that moment changed. I knew I could move forward. It was about a year and a half after having daughter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read to you once in a while, and if there's lines, because I'm blind. Basically, I'm going to share what this is like with you. The best way I can describe the process of moving forward after losing someone so close to you is by comparing the process to a train ride. When you envision a train, you can picture a long line of separate compartments. Life moves forward from the last compartment to the first. As you progress in life, you slowly move from one car to the next, eventually shutting the door to the previous compartment and becoming content in the next one, until it's time to move forward again. That moving forward, letting go of one door and stretching for the next one, often shakes every part of you. If you remember in leaving a train compartment and you're closing one door and you're trying to reach for the other one, there's that place in the middle and you're shaking. Well, that's what it's like. And sometimes, though, it may feel as if you've moved from one compartment to the next without even being aware of it. Mostly you're trembling across the unknown. When I lost the love of my life, I was keenly aware of every single movement, often as if it were in slow motion. I chose to open the door and reach for the next compartment, still seeing the compartments behind me, but moving forward to the next one on my own. I find comfort in knowing I can always look back to see and remember everything inside of each compartment, while I know there is so much more to do in the one I'm in now. This book is, first and foremost, the story of my life with Howard from age 17 through 66. It began with the kind of chemistry that hits like a bolt of lightning. There is actually an Italian phrase for this, colpo de fulmine, implying a thunderbolt so powerful and intense that it can't be denied. Love may strike this way at first glance, or it may develop quietly over time, from friendship through that first kiss to a quiet mutual recognition. But however it comes, there is no going back. Chemistry always wins. For us, that chemistry took hold and never let go for over 50 years. I like to describe our life together as a kind of dance. Sometimes we waltzed and twirled effortlessly. Sometimes we engaged in a tango. And sometimes we stepped on each other's toes. But we were always touching and taking turns leading. Since Howard's death, I have had to learn how to dance alone. To move forward with a partner I cannot see or feel. I circle the room as the music continues to play and the room continues to spin, knowing I must somehow keep dancing. I wrote this book to share my process of moving forward, continuing to dance without Howard. My purpose to help other widows while keeping my husband's memory alive. So, one of the things I find about this book is actually that I believe it has a life of its own. And about 3 years after Howard died, 3 different women who didn't know each other, lived in different states, said to me, it's been about 3 years, you ought to write about your process. And I said, what process? I don't have a process. And And each one, independent of each other, said to me, yeah, you have a process. The first year you did one thing, the second year you did another thing, the third year, I said, I don't have any process. And they said, remember, the first year you were repairing all kinds of big things in the house. And I said, well, of course, we had leaks in the roof, and I couldn't have the roof repaired and replaced because I couldn't have people banging on his head. He was in bed, his bed. And in Florida, we have lovely termites. And you have to leave your house and get the house tented because it's with poison for about 2 or 3 days. Well, I couldn't have them leave the house. So there were those kinds of things. So the first year, I said, you know what, give yourself a year. And I don't know where I make this stuff up, but I did. Give yourself a year to do it. What doesn't happen in the winter will happen in the spring. It hasn't happened in the spring, but you'll get to everything. And that was the first year. In the second year, I did everything that dealt with paper. In other words, the house is in 2 names, I had to change that. The car's in 2 names, I had to change that. Bank accounts are in 2 names, I had to change. So you do all these things, and I said, okay, anything with paper. In the third year, I went upstairs, and there was old furniture that had to be donated. Then there was also, remember, photographs that weren't on the camera? I had 7,300 photos. His original family, my original family, our family, we're dating, we're married, the children, their families, their children, 7,300 photos prior to the phone. Half of them I got rid of, the rest I had put on a flash drive because I had to scan them. So, you know, that was year 3. So each year, apparently, I had a process that I didn't know. And one of these women of the 3 was she was a physician. And she said, I have patients, TS, and you know, some of them sit in a corner, some of them hoard things, some of them can't, you've got to write this down. I said, thank you, but goodbye. And that was the end. In the 4th year, I was getting my hair dyed. For those of you who do get your hair dyed, you're sitting with stuff on your head for 32 minutes. And of course, you talk to your hairdresser. So I'm telling my hairdresser this about the process, and he said to me, you know, Arlene, they're right. I have clients, exactly what the physician said, I have the same thing. They can't move forward. You have a process, you should write it. And I said, oh yeah, right, that's gonna happen. So he said to me, and as a matter of fact, I have 2 clients like you. They stayed in their house, they moved forward, they fixed things, you should talk to them. And I said, what do you mean I should? I can't go around calling some woman and say, oh, my husband's dead and your husband's dead. We should have a conversation. It doesn't work like that. And he said to me, no, I'll communicate with them. I said, ask them if they would like to talk to me and give me permission to speak with them. I don't know what I'm going to say to them, but yeah, I'll talk to them because I'm not a good support group person. I think support groups are great, but you know. So he did that. The 2 women who live somewhere in my community, they're about 30 minutes. One is, you know, 30 minutes, one's 10 minutes. I did meet with them, we had lunch, and what I did was I started taking notes as they spoke, and I asked their permission, and they said fine. And it seemed like it was going to be interviews, but it actually was conversations. And this is what grew out of it. In the process of writing this book, and quite by surprise at first, I was joined by 13 other widows, eager to share their stories with me. They came to me one by one as a result of a few thoughtful people in whom I confided and who in turn sent others my way. Ultimately, the journey of these women supplemented and augmented my own, providing examples of the multiple paths widows take on their way forward. I like to think that I did not choose these stories, but that they chose me. The fact that these women turned out to be a diverse group with sharply differing experiences and perspectives was as unexpected as everything about my process. They came from different cultures: Christian, Jewish, Black, Asian, Hispanic, European, and different countries: United States, Japan, Portugal, France, Cuba, India, Jamaica. They are of various ages, from 34 to 82, and sexual orientations. Their spouses died from illnesses or accidents. Some had adult children at the moment their widowhood began, some teenagers, some infants, and some no children at all. One had been widowed previously, so now she was a widow twice. I hope that by sharing their experiences along with my own, I have presented a variety of role models for other women, and the story of each woman in this book will be relatable to a particular reader who needs to hear it. As a group, we are diverse, yet we share a bond. We have all gone through the process of moving forward after being widowed, and we have all talked about this process frankly. These women actually are my heroes, and I am eternally grateful that they were willing to share their stories with me and ultimately with you. So what happens though also is, as you progress through this, you have to make choices. And there were 3 choices that I made immediately. And I didn't plan it, I didn't know, I had no experience. And I made it about 3 weeks after Howard died. And the first choice was to wear black for a year. The second choice was not to listen to music, and the third choice was not to dance. Wearing black is a traditional expression of mourning in many cultures, including the United States. I decided this discipline of wearing black suited me, and immediately moved the rest of my clothes out of my closet. For 1 year, I focused my energy on getting through each day and maintaining my emotional stability, not on what outfit I'd be wearing. So, you know, when you go to a closet, if you wear brown pants, you gotta think about that, or just, no. What I soon discovered was that this choice not only freed me from issues of fashion, appearance, and impression, it also set me on a path of simplicity. It became easier to move through the day, and at the day's end, drop my black clothes into the laundry basket, take a hot shower, and crawl into bed. When the next day arrived, simplicity prevailed once more. Year 1 went by in this fashion, for lack of it. No music. Whatever era we come of age in my case it was the 60s, we all remember beloved music and lyrics of the day. What's more, throughout the course of a long relationship, certain songs accrue special meaning. Music has a way of evoking memories, moments, and firsts, as nothing else can, and producing what is known for the French as a frisson, which is basically a shiver. You hear that music or that song, you start to shiver. I knew that getting through all the milestones of year 1, birthdays, anniversaries, and such, would be difficult. I decided it might be easier to weather these occasions without the additional association and feelings called up by the music that had become meaningful to Howard and myself. One of these was Yes, I'm Ready, which we heard when we started dating. Another one was My Cup Runneth Over. And add to these the romantic strains of Johnny Mathis, Roberta Flack, and the rest of the romantic slow dance music of those years. Sometimes operatic arias, Broadway show tunes, even Hallmark commercial jingles could set off a flood of feelings inside. So I made a conscious effort to avoid songs that would provide comfort rather than pain. No dancing. Remembering that shared feeling, the closeness, the touch, can be overwhelming. I had often decided life with Howard was like a dance. So when that dance ended, it made sense for me to take a break from literal dance. Again, this left me much more able to focus on what I needed to accomplish. It also offered me an excuse for declining invitations to parties and gatherings, which spared me the experience of sitting at a table while the music and the couples spun around. Not attending parties was a beneficial result of my moratorium on music and dancing. My choices fit together and they fit me. A different choice that happens is when you decide, no, I may have to socialize in some way. And so we were a couple for a long time, and I had other couples come to dinner, and we went out. So there were two couples I felt really quite safe with. And that's one of the things you have when you have to start being with a couple, because you're a third. We used to call that a third wheel, but you know you're a third, and they're a couple. So I called my friends Gail and Jim, and a couple, in my community, with whom we were friends, and another couple, Luis and Anna, who were from Portugal and lived in Miami half a year. Portugal, half Miami. So I called them individually, and I said, I'm going to invite you for a practice dinner. This is an experiment. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'd like to try. So Gail and Jim came, and I had this dinner planned, which happened. And I have a wood table in my kitchen, and I put the placemats down, and I sit everything nice, forks on the left, knives, well, you know how I am with a knife now, knives and spoons, and even in front of the placemat, the dessert and cafes were very nice. I'm going to serve French bread and salad. Then I'm going to serve shrimp sauteed with a little butter, because it only takes 5 minutes, and rice. So I put out the French bread and the salad, and we eat it, and it's great. Everything's great. So at the end of salad, I say to Gail and Jim, I said, you know what? Now I'm going to take the salad plates away, and then we'll have the main course. Fine. So Gail says, well, I'll bring our plates, you take your plate, and we'll meet you at the sink, which is like 3 feet away. So I said, great. So we get to the sink. How am I doing, Gilly? And she says, doing great, Arlene. It might be good if you gave us back all the silverware and the glasses that you took away. And I went, oh. So of course I went to the drawer and I put out some more silverware, and of course it was a mess. To me, but it was a practice, it was an experiment. Served the shrimp, served the rice, everything was fine. But inside, I knew I did something wrong, because you couldn't eat, you had no silverware. So that was Gail and Jim, and that was fine. A week later, I served the same meal to Anna and Luis. Now I'm not touching the silverware. I don't care if it's dirty, it's going to sit right there. So we have the French bread, and we have the salad, and it's fun. Not touching anything. We take the salad plates away, and Anna very nicely said, how about we plate the food up there? And I go, oh, okie dokie. So we take the plates, and the shrimp sitting in a little butter sauce, it's nice. So I go to my rice cooker. I make rice in the rice cooker. And I push the button for the rice cooker, and there, when the lid pops open, is a rock of rice. A ball that's a rock. And so I take a fork and I take a spoon and I'm banging this rock. I'm banging it. And Anna said, Arlene, this is not going to work. And then I realized I had put everything in the rice cooker except the liquid. So no water, no broth, nothing. And it's a ball that's a rock. So I'm like really nervous. She goes, what we're going to do is you have more French bread. We're going to put out the shrimp with the French bread, and we'll all dip it. We'll be good. And she had brought the chocolate mousse. She makes good chocolate mousse. So any dinner is saved by chocolate mousse. But there I was, practiced dinner, failed again. But it was a first. I tried. It was a choice. And what happened was, a year later, I invited both couples again separately, and it was fine. But of course, I made a roast chicken. I wasn't going to fool them. So that's really part of the choices you make. Another choice I made that changed everything has to do with your first laugh. Because you don't really laugh. I mean, you smile and you may giggle a little bit, but there's no real laughing. 3 years after Howard died, my friend Bud was planning a trip to Barcelona, Spain, with a couple, and he invited me to join them. I said I'd think about it, hung up the phone, looked in the mirror, and said, I don't think so. They were leaving in 2 weeks, also, how could I possibly consider it? So when I mentioned the invitation to my daughter the next day, she didn't hesitate. She said, just go. Get on the plane and go. You can afford a ticket, Bud will take care of you, and you might even have a good time. And if you don't, you can always get on a plane and come home. I had never even met this other couple. But I trusted Bud. And when you go through something like this, if you trust people, it really takes you very far. After a bit of thought, I embraced the idea and said yes. As it worked out, I had to go to Spain by myself and back alone. I found my way to the hotel without incident and was welcomed by warm and wonderful people. What I never expected, and I mean never expected, was that I'd experience a major first on Sunday, December 18th, 2016. Having survived walking with my old friend Bud and my new friends through a torrential rainstorm from the train to the restaurant. Now, I live in Miami, so we know torrential rainstorms. It comes right before a hurricane. We get rainstorms. Well, this torrential rainstorm was awful. And we looked at each other, and our clothes were completely bedraggled. We were soggy, and we just all started laughing, looking at each other, because we looked so bizarre. We started laughing. My companions laughed, and I laughed right along with them. This was one of those exuberant, overpowering belly laughs, the kind I had not experienced in 3 years. We dried off the best we could, sat and ordered food, laughing the whole time. I continued to laugh with the others until happy tears started to roll down my cheeks. And my head actually nearly hit the table from this laughter. I had not really laughed in 3 years, but that night the spell was broken. Because I made the choice to try. And so as you can see, this is a process that goes on and on. And another thing that happens is you develop some new concepts. And one of the 2 concepts I developed towards the end as I was writing the book was, I realized there's such a thing as almost happy. And the second concept is, some people just don't fit. 5 years after Howard's death, I began to feel happiness again, within limits. I guess you could say I was almost happy. The return of joy surprised me, but I knew it was real. At times, I'd catch myself singing or whistling around the house, but then something would remind me of Howard and I'd fall back into sad reverie. I came to understand that being almost happy was a balancing act that would probably continue for a very long time. I decided that being almost happy might be good enough. It really wasn't so bad to dwell in a peaceful state where I was fully able to enjoy a moment, a day, an experience. So what if challenges loomed on the horizon? That is part of moving through the world, something I am proud to be able to do. And the other one is, some people just don't fit. And there's a good line about this. It says, At some point, you have to realize that some people can stay in your heart, but not in your life. This may be hard to fathom when you have just experienced a loss, but you may not need all the friends you can get. What I'm trying to say is that your life just changed profoundly, and there may be some perfectly lovely, or not so lovely, people in it who no longer fit. It's not their fault. It's not your fault. As your needs change, as you change, there will be some collateral loss. The first people to let go of are those who are negative by their very nature. When you have had a partner, perhaps this negativity didn't affect you so much. Perhaps you didn't even notice it. We need to be we tend to be more tolerant of our friends' quirks when we have a partner to lean on. But after a loss as profound as a spouse's death, we are already fighting against the clouds that surround us. The last thing we need is someone bringing more bad weather into our life. Well, the other women, by the way, every one of them, this was one comment all of them made: get rid of negative people. But there was one of them, her name is Nettie, and she used the phrase, I wish I could say it was my phrase, but every time I think about this, it's just a riot to me. Nettie also advocated for the elimination of negativity. I have no time for drama, she explained. I think of negative people as energy vampires. I just think that's a stuff. Who can suck you dry. And don't get me started on trying to fix them. That just isn't possible. Sometimes you just have to bite the bullet and get yourself some new friends who provide what you need, which is some measure of peace. And I'd like to end by sharing this last piece. While widowhood isn't one experience, there are many things about it that do seem constant. I have shared with you many of the fears, concerns, problems, logistics, and situations I have faced along my own path, and have gone on to interview others about the same matters. Should I stay in my marital home? Will I ever feel like seeking out a new partner? Why don't people understand that I don't want to join the party, and maybe I never will? Although the answers to these questions are as unique as the women with whom I spoke, I've discovered that we in this Widows Club feel the same way about a lot of things. And that in and of itself is extremely comforting. I'm not alone in my experience. I'm not the first to feel these feelings, and neither are you. So I began by saying how much I appreciate and I'm thrilled that you came to hear me about my book. So thank you, and I really appreciate it.